Oh, there you are, my loyal fans. Welcome back to James Krasnarik's list of the top 10 defenses in league history. Another amazing broadcast of real steel sports. I've been doing these top 10 lists during Super Bowl week because I feel it's the best time to kind of give fans, a taste of what they're going to see this year's Super Bowl, but also, to educate them on league history, because having a knowledge of NFL history, I feel, is invaluable to NFL fans. And coming in at number 4 is one of the best single-season defenses in league history, the 1969 Kansas City Chiefs, a.k.a. the Redwood Forest. When you think of the Steelers of today, you think of the 3-4 defense. The Packers, the Cowboys, all these teams run the 3-4. The 1969 Chiefs is where it began, because you had defensive linemen like Curly Culp and Buck Buchanan, who were very, very flexible. Now, their base defense was a 4-3, Kansas City, in 1969. But they very often mixed it up and would drop a guy off the line of scrimmage and turn it into a 3-4. Very often that would confuse several opposing offensive lines. They didn't know which guys to block, and you could either get a free sack of a quarterback, or the quarterback wouldn't see the lineman drop and it would be an easy interception. And they used that personnel grouping a lot in Super Bowl IV against the Vikings, and they hammered them 23-7. The Chiefs, though, are the last defense, the 1969 Chiefs, the last defense in league history to rank first in points per game allowed, yards per game allowed, passing and rushing yards per game allowed in a single season. They gave up 12.6 in the regular season per game, but allowed 6.7 points per game in the postseason. They gave up 20 points all playoffs long. It's pretty damn impressive. 225.9 yards per game, 77 rush yards per game, 148 pass yards per game. And as the scheme suggests, the fact that they could do a 3-4 and a 4-3 hybrid, which goes to show how incredibly flexible and how talented their defense was. You had defensive tackle Buck Buchanan, who really pioneered being a nose guard, or the nose tackles they call it, the 3-4. You had linebackers Willie Lanier and Bobby Bell. Bobby Bell may have been up there as one of the greatest overall outside linebackers in league history in a 4-3 scheme. Willie Lanier was, at that time, maybe the greatest middle linebacker to ever play the game. Was changing the game inside. Ferocious hitter, could intercept the football. He could do everything you asked him, and he was big and he was strong. And then you had cornerback Emmitt Thomas, one of the greatest interceptors in league history. Very, very solid tackler. An absolute perfect complement to that front seven the Kansas City Chiefs had in that day. The 1969 team featured 4 Pro Bowlers, Lanier and Bobby Bell, and also cornerback Jim Marcellus and safety Johnny Robinson. And with a defense that deep, it was no wonder that when they got the Super Bowl, they were a confident group, and they absolutely hammered Minnesota 23-7, one of the most lopsided performances in Super Bowl history, particularly the fact that defense absolutely crushed the Vikings offense. You look at Vikings quarterback Joe Kapp after that game, he looked like he got beaten up in a dark alley. Unbelievable how well that defense played that year. They didn't have a weakness in any of their defensive units, whether it be secondary, linemen, or linebackers. They could do just about everything, which makes it such a tough unit to go against. Now we move on to the 3 greatest defenses in league history. Before I'd like to talk about this, I'd like to recap not the ones that we've talked about so far, but some of the honorable mentions. I feel it's fair to give them their dues. The 2008 Pittsburgh Steelers giving up 13.9 points per game. Doesn't seem impressive when you consider the single season totals of like the Ravens and the Bucks. When you consider the fact that nowadays offenses can do just whatever the hell they want, and defense have to stop them. The Steelers' defense that year played well, and they played some very, very talented quarterbacks, and they still held them down. You also have to look at the Steelers in the mid-'90s, the ones that went to AFC title games and appeared in Super Bowl 30. And you also have to look at the 49ers when Joe Montana was playing quarterback there. I mean, they had Ronnie Lott, they had Eric Wright, they had Keena Turner. You don't look at a lot of those players and say they're all great players, but the way they played as a unit was unbelievable. And you have Ronnie Lott, who might be the best strong safety in league history. Coming up was a defense that may have also taken a backseat to his offense, but was still incredible nonetheless. Number 3 on my list of the best defenses ever, Vince Lombardi's Packers, 1959 to 1967. Legendary unit with names that just glow with their greatness. You just feel, whenever you see their names and you read them and you read what they've done, you feel the mystique of the way that they played. They allowed 15.4 points per game over a 9-year stretch. They won 5 NFL titles in 7 years, including Super Bowls 1 and 2, in which they beat the Chiefs 35-10 and the Raiders 33-14. 2 dangerous offenses with Hall of Famers on both sides. And they had 5 Hall of Famers on that unit. You had middle linebacker Ray Nitschke, who was he almost looked like Freddy Krueger on game day. He would change into this hitting machine, and he would hit you all day long. You had defensive ends, the defensive linemen, Willie Davis and Henry Jordan. They were smart and they were quick. And they had defensive backs, Willie Wood and Herb Adderley. They allowed, I believe, one season in that stretch where they didn't allow an opponent to hit 5 yards in attempt passing. That's preposterous now. I mean, they didn't have any weaknesses in their defense either. Their units, the ends, the interior linemen, the linebackers, and the secondary all played so soundly. Even the non Hall of Famers in that defense. You still had to find a way to try to stop them. You had to find a way to try to move the football on them and prevent them from stopping you. And so many teams failed to be able to figure out how to do that. They absolutely deserve to be on the list. And you can make an argument actually that in that era, the Detroit Lions with guys like Joe Schmidt and Dick LeBeau and Alex Karras might have been better. But when it came time to play, the Lions defense, they weren't as good as Green Bay's from top to bottom. And that's why Green Bay's on this list at number 3, and that's why Detroit is left off the list. Mentioning Detroit and Green Bay, giving the NFC North some love, fans of that division are going to be really happy with my next choice on the list. Number 2, all-time greatest defense, the 46, the 1984 to 1986 Chicago Bears. It wasn't a scheme defense. It wasn't a defense that, okay, you take this gap or you cover this guy or you try to stop this guy. It was designed on pressure. Attack the quarterback and the running back with overwhelming numbers. They played man for man on almost every single snap because very often they were going to get to the quarterback in time. From those 3 years, they allowed 13.2 points per game. They recorded 72 sacks in 1984, which is still an NFL record. They went 15-1 in 1985 and allowed 10 points combined in 3 playoff games, including the only team in league history to shut out 2 teams back-to-back in the postseason. At the time, it was the fewest points allowed in a 16-game season at 187, and in Super Bowl 20 against the New England Patriots, they allowed 7 yards rushing. Defense with 3 Hall of Famers on it. You had linebacker Mike Singletary, who, as a run stopper, may have been one of the best run-stopping linebackers in league history. Underrated in terms of his ability to cover. He was an incredibly smart linebacker. Very, very studious, very, very smart, very, very strong. You had defensive end Richard Dent, who was quick. Late-round draft pick. Huge impact in that Bears defense, one of their best pass rushers. And then you had Dan Hampton, the defensive tackle in the middle, who could do a lot of different things. He could drop back if needed. He could go after the quarterback and stop the run. He could do everything. That defense is one of the most complete in NFL history. But there's a reason why they're not number 1. It's the one flaw of the 46. And in their best year in 1985, Dan Marino and the Dolphins showed it. Back then in the mid-'80s, Dan Marino had probably the greatest pass protection offensive line in league history, with guys like Dwight Stevenson on the team. Now, he may have been sacked 3 times in the Monday night win over the Bears, 38-24, that ended their chance for an undefeated season. But Marino was given enough time to throw. And if you can have time to throw against any 46 defense, regardless of how good their secondary is, you're going to complete some passes. Because of the scheme that they played, it wasn't a scheme defense. But the fact is, the way their defensive backs played, you absolutely had to get to the quarterback as quick as you can. If not, you're just going to get dissected. And that's a fatal flaw that keeps the Bears from reaching number 1. Also, in a couple of key playoff games, whether it be versus the Redskins or whether it be versus the 49ers, their defense didn't show up when they needed to. All right, here we are. Numbers 10 through 2 have been revealed. Coming back, the number 1 defense of all time. It's the defense that scared opponents like none other. Stay tuned.